Hi, this is Andy Hoffman of CryptoGoldCentral.com, the sound money blog of the 21st century, and now a leading provider of professional cryptocurrency consulting to individuals and altcoin developers alike. This week's guest, in his sixth one-on-one appearance, is one of the most well-known jack-of-all-trades like cryptocurrency experts. His Twitter feed at Ansel Lindner is must-read material, while his Bitcoin and Markets podcast, found at BTCMRKTS, is now available on the World Crypto Network's iTunes channel. To that end, Ansel, welcome to One-on-One.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Okay, so we're at another crossroads on Bitcoin's seemingly endless FUD express, as it endures the growing pains of becoming the first new mega asset class in centuries. And so we have one of the sector's top voices of reason to discuss things. And in my view, the Mt. Gox trustee is the single biggest factor contributing to the price weakness. However, per the articles I posted yesterday and today on Steemit, the amount he actually has left to sell could be far less than most people expect. Moreover, this morning's blockbuster news that the US DOJ is investigating the possibility of Bitcoin price manipulation has the sector abuzz, as if acknowledging the obvious, per what I wrote in Monday's Beat the Bitcoin Bots, is somehow news. Currently, the spin establishment sympathizers like Bloomberg are putting on it is that it is Bitcoin negative, despite no practical reason to believe so. And likely, the out-of-the-blue price plunge over the past 2 days was likely to insiders' knowledge of the pending announcement. That said, as we have all learned over and over again over the past 2 years, there is no way of knowing what will drive the price next at any given time. From the shocking surge from 5,000 to 20,000 over a 5-week period in the fall, to the plunge back to 6,000 in the subsequent 7 weeks, to the mega volatile, mega enigmatic price movements in the subsequent 3.5 months. To that end, Ansel, what is your best guess as to why Bitcoin, and by proxy the crypto space in general, has become so volatile in recent months? In essence, spinning its wheels in an environment of low liquidity, heightened FUD, and in Bitcoin's case, no bad news to speak of other than the Mt. Gox trustee.
Yeah, I think that last bit was really important. There's no bad news. So this isn't like a fundamentals problem. Bitcoin is fundamentally very, very strong. And if you draw a line on the chart at the bottom of the chart, like it's a straight line up, and it's just volatility going up. So there's nothing like wrong with Bitcoin or anything even to be worried about at this point. It's just a little bit of a slow market. There's a little bit of weak demand, and that's to be expected, being a Giffen good, right? As the price goes up, people want more of it. And so as the price is going down, it works in the opposite direction. So we are just in a consolidation period. I still see this as a sideways market because, we had the two kind of double bottom. Maybe we'll have a sort of a triple bottom with a slightly increasing low. And to me, that's a sideways market where everything is fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you can, of course, and we'll get to some of these issues in a second, you can try to pin it on anything. You could say, well, people are worried about manipulation or the Mt. Gox, or, I see there were some hacks at like B Gold and Verge, which are the result of not having stable networks with a lot of demand in mining during weak period times, because right now most of what goes on in the networks is trading. And if trading is down, then everything goes down. So let's go back to early February. Bitcoin's final plunge to 5970, i.e. exactly a $100 billion market cap, did not, in my view, feel like capitulation. For the Mt. Gox trustee, perhaps, as unquestionably he dumped 8,000 coins that day at any price he could get. However, for crypto investors at large, other than those forced to sell for financial reasons, I didn't sense a capitulatory surrender, but rather a more deer in headlights response, particularly as the price rapidly reversed and nearly doubled in the subsequent month. This time around, as discussed in yesterday's article, Mass Mental Capitulation, I sense that the majority of Bitcoin investors have sold, and those that are still around, particularly new investors with huge paper losses, are at the razor's edge. Trading volumes are massively lower, as well as Twitter posts, Google searches, crypto podcast hits, and CGC site traffic, to give a few empirical examples. Not to mention the horrific investor sentiment viewed in tweet responses, chat rooms, and the increasingly powerful lore of TA fudsters, or for that matter, anyone with something negative to say about Bitcoin. In light of this description, Ansel, do you feel investors are in a state of capitulation, not just due to the current violent downtrend, but the disappointment of the previous Bitcoin false rallies?
Yeah, I do. I think that slowly we see the dumb money is getting out. I made some notes while you're talking there. The dumb money is getting out, and uh, the strong hands are slowly accumulating throughout this whole phase. I mean, people that I talk to that have been in Bitcoin a long time, they buy when they have some available capital. So once a month or maybe even once a quarter, they will go and they buy, and that is clockwork. So slowly but surely, the dumb money is selling and the strong hands are buying. So that's only good in the long term. I wanted to make a point too on the last little question you had was about Bit Gold getting hacked and some of these other things getting exposed. Now, Ethereum, there was a great article by Stopped and Decrypt yesterday where he talked about the exponential growth of Ethereum's current state and how that is going to be a brick wall for them pretty soon. I think a lot of these altcoins are being exposed, and that, and as a general error in the market, affects it negatively. So a lot of these people that aren't Bitcoin maximalists, they see this as like, oh, if Ethereum is having problems scaling, and now look at Bitcoin Gold, it got hacked, and et cetera, all these other problems. Right now is probably not the best time to buy any crypto. So slowly but surely, we're going to consolidate, and strong hands are going to accumulate, and we'll start on the next leg.
Yeah. Again, I go back to that $100 billion market cap level, $6,000 roughly. That's where institutions, a lot of them are allowed for the first time to get in. And a lot of them started to look at Bitcoin when it got there. And by the time they even had a chance to blink their eye, it was 20,000. And then the next time they blinked their eye, it was crashing. And neither of those are environments where institutions are going to be buying, especially when they're just getting set up in their research and their trading and their custodial situation, which they now have had 5 or 6 months to get a hold of. And so I would think when institutions do their work on this, they are going to see what we have seen all along, that Bitcoin is so valuable, and that it's going to be, it's going to be them that are the strong hands that are buying from the weak hands who, basically came in at the end stages, and what the herds do. They buy at the top and they sell low. That is being put to the test over the last 5 or 6 months, and so far so good. We'll just have to see what happens in the coming months. I mean, now I'll bring up the B Gold, and Verge was another one. Again, my guess is that almost everything that goes on in these networks relates to trading, and when trading is down, they become a lot more vulnerable because they're not used for anything other than trading. And Ethereum, why don't you go into that a little? Because I saw that too. It said somehow it reached one, not what do you got, megabyte, gigabyte, like one something byte, like a monster size of its network that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. So if you go back to the Genesis block and you store every transaction and everything, including all the states, the current states that are part of the blockchain, you're on Ethereum. It's over 1 terabyte now. So it's 1.1 terabyte. And if you want to sync that, basically you never can. And then what they do also, unlike Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin has a rolling state as well, the UTXO stat, right? So that's kept separately, so you can check the transaction. Your node can check the transactions really quickly. But for Ethereum, it's a gigantic state that's like 20 or 30 gigabytes. I'm not quite sure. I've heard some people say it's up to 60 gigabytes at times. But that you have to sync that too. And eventually that current state, as more and more dApps get onto Ethereum, that current state is going to grow faster than you can sync as well. And it is not like, it's not just an academic exercise. This happens over and over and over again in networks, and Ethereum is going to run into that problem. So one they try to solve this. You've probably heard of sharding. Sharding is where they break up the current state into different shards that a section of the network will process, and that makes it easier, but it just delays the inevitable. Slowly but surely, nodes will not be able to stay synced or get synced in the first place, and it will centralize the nodes. This article said they will come to a crisis point where all of a sudden the network stops working because the last node has stopped keeping up, and it just crashes the whole thing. It's a failure of the network.
And that's kind of what I talked about with Rocky Palumbo back in December. I did a one-on-one with him, and he went through the case of big blocks and why it doesn't work. I mean, it's almost comical, the fact that this far into the whole Bcash experiment, that they're trading at whatever 13% of Bitcoin, and B, that people, knowledgeable people actually believe that it could scale with big blocks. He's basically saying the same kind of thing that you said. If you had big blocks with Bcash, and that it would take an infinite amount of time for the computers to sync up the transactions, so it would be completely insecure and unusable. The problem with Bcash, the bigger problem, is that no one uses it. The only thing they use it for is trading, just like B Gold and anything else. And so not only can they not scale, but they also may have the same issues that B Gold has right now at some point if not enough people are interested in it. And yes, I know that they have, like, Bitmain as a vested interest. So they do have one big miner who owns so much of it already that he'll probably keep mining it just to hold up the value of his holdings. But that's just a very unique case. Either you unless you have the scaling situation that Bitcoin has with Lightning Network and the secure network and everything that's going on, or you have massive amount of demand, something is going to go awry. And as with Ethereum, as you're kind of saying, it's just not made to do what people want it to do.
Yeah, from the beginning, people have been saying, I've said this multiple times throughout the years, that it's not a world computer, right? Everything that happens on Ethereum has to happen on your node if you run a node. So it can only scale to the size of your node. Once your node stops keeping up, most other nodes will probably stop keeping up, and then the network fails. So it's trying to put the world's computing onto one little node. It's not ever going to scale that way.
Yeah, well, I guess the theme here is the exposure in bad times of things that don't work. And a lot of things are not going to work simply because no one uses them. Some are not going to work because they're not secure. And some are not going to work because, like in Ethereum's case, and again, there's not a guarantee Ethereum won't work, but mathematically, what it sounds like is they're going to have to hit this point unless they can figure out a technological solution. Because the only crypto that actually has been proven to work and has created the means of expanding beyond its boundaries is Bitcoin.
Yeah, in the article Stop and Decrypt, he says that they're going to have to institute a block size, a maximum block size, because you have to stop this exponential growth in the current state on the Ethereum network. So, but that prices out dApps, basically, because they're going to have.
You're saying it'll make Ethereum less valuable if it is forced to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, many of the dApp use cases are predicated on very, very low fees or almost zero fees. Just like, they do gas, right? But they don't have anything that's a fee for block size or like this per byte of a transaction or a smart contract. But they're gonna have to put a block size on there, which makes most of those use cases economically impossible. So it's a lose-lose situation, is what this Stop and Decrypt guy is saying.
Yeah. Well, I think Ethereum from the beginning got way out of hand compared to, I'm sure, what Vitalik envisioned it from the beginning. There was a speculative mania in tokens. It taxed the network. It forced them. They even had to do a rollback at one point. And I think a lot of the knowledgeable people in the Bitcoin community watch it like they're watching like the Hawaiian volcano, waiting to see if something big will happen. Maybe nothing big happens, But as we saw in Hawaii, sometimes very big things do happen, and I want no part of it. It's a test net for crypto in general, and we will see. Now, next, I want to go deeper into the DOJ investigation announced this morning of potential Bitcoin price manipulation. Thus far, and we're talking about just a few hours in, they haven't said whether they believe prices were supported or suppressed, though quite obviously it's the latter, or whether they are targeting exchanges or futures markets or both. Now, given my background in outing market manipulation of all kinds, I have very strong opinions on the topic. But let's start with you, Ansel, and your view on whether this is big news or no news at all.
It's kind of big news, but I don't think it. I'm not worried about price manipulation. I think you won't be able to hold down the price forever, very long, and it's extremely rare. Bitcoin is extremely rare, so they're just, if they try to manipulate the market, they're going to end up just delaying the inevitable. I think this is interesting from the point of view that some whale probably complained, right? Like some new guy that entered at the end of last year, maybe even entered in the futures market, or they something like that. They went to the government and complained about it. That's the only reason why they open up these type of things, isn't it? You're the expert in this area, not me. So I'm interested to see what you have to say.
Well, look, in precious metals, there has never been a gold inquiry or investigation in all the 15 years I was watching. And I mean, there's no market that's more rigged and more obviously rigged and proven to be rigged and admitted to be rigged than gold. There have been several in silver. All of them came to nothing, even though the last one was a few years ago. One of the CFTC commissioners, his name was Bart Sheldon, he actually pretty much came out and said, the silver market is rigged, absolutely. And yet his team a few years later said, nope, nothing's wrong. And again, the whole thing is, look, the DOJ, Bitcoin is an enemy of the state, just as gold and silver is. It's not like they're going to come out and say something that helps Bitcoin. They can't say anything that hurts it. And obviously they're, just bringing it into light is a positive thing. It's certainly a negative thing that it's being done. But again, it's pretty obvious. I mean, look at my Twitter feed. I talk about it all the time about the bots that are holding the price down. And is it a coincidence that the price peaked like the week of the futures coming out? I don't know. The futures are still pretty small relative. It's not like gold where the futures are like 100 times the size of the gold market. The futures are tiny in Bitcoin. But it is definitely suspect. It's definitely something to watch. But I'd rather have it out in the light that the smart people can see that, yes, there's something nefarious going on. And I think if anyone does their due diligence, they're going to see that if anything, it's caused prices to go lower. Again, I'm talking about something. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but it's almost impossible. The only way you can rig something higher, okay, is if you have absolutely massive amounts of capital to buy. And the only places you see that go on are the stock and bond markets. In bonds, that's what QE is. That's what zero interest rate policy is, a negative interest rate. It means printing money and buying bonds. That's what the president's working group on capital markets does in the stock market. And the exchange stabilization fund, they have unlimited treasury funds to buy. But you can only sell so much. If naked shorting rules are enforced, which I'm guessing they are in the futures market. Plus, the futures are just not big enough to support the kind of trading that would do material damage. You can only sell so much, and you also need people to lend you shares if you want to sell them. And a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of exchanges don't do that. So I just think right now you just have some manipulative bots out there that are taking advantage of the trend. It's nice that it's out in the open, but I think it's a lot smaller news, and it's certainly, if anyone did sell, if this big sell-off the last 2 days is because of, well, we knew that this news was coming out, it's not news. It's certainly not bad for Bitcoin. It's at best it's at worst neutral. So next, a topic people love or hate me for, which is my distaste for gurus who claim to know where the price is going for any period other than the long term. And worse yet, those who have all outcomes covered, as I've observed for 15 years in precious metals, by being, quote, short-term bearish, but long-term bullish. This is not about anyone specifically, but instead a commentary on how 90% of traders typically lose money. particularly amateurs without professional tools like formal education, practical experience, and margin trading capability, particularly in the wildly volatile, at times maddeningly and enigmatic crypto space. So Ansel, what's your view of crypto trading in general? And in your view, is any method or any specific person or persons worth paying attention to?
I've been watching all your tweets and stuff. It's pretty good. I think you're doing a valuable service by, saying do your own research. Don't worry about what the quote unquote experts say. I do have a show where I talk about the fundamentals and how I think that'll affect the price. In the midterm, I do talk about some short-term price forecast, but mainly directional things like I think the price will go down a little bit before it goes up, something like that. But I don't know. I think there is some value for altcoins in technical analysis because it is such a shallow market, and the whales are painting the chart, right? They're the people that buy in early on these altcoins are the founders. They're purposely painting the chart to make TA work. So I think there is something to be said for that, but you will get burned. They eventually will beat you, right? And so most people, 95% of people should not trade. If you have many, many hours and you want to do a lot of research into this and you have some sort of insider information or asymmetric knowledge, then I think that you can make money on trading. But for the vast majority of people, they should just buy and hold Bitcoin.
Right. Look, but I mean, I'm a fundamental analyst too. I've worked as a trader for many years. Trading does have tools that are involved in it, as does fundamental analysis. It's just one tool that's used in the context of the big picture. And what I've seen in this sector is it's so wildly volatile, and it almost pays in Bitcoin no attention to anything that you're better off avoiding it. But more importantly, it's I dislike when people have both sides covered, because it's almost like they benefit if it goes down and if it goes up. And in this sector, people are terrified. The last thing that this sector needs, especially at a time right now, is people scaring them, because we're trying to get people into Bitcoin. But that just it is what it is. I'm not going to go too far on this topic, other than to say do your own due diligence. Now, a topic yes, go on.
Yeah, I just want to say it is a casino, right? And you do have it's not a blackjack table, it's more like a poker table. So there are going to be those whales, and there are going to be those people that are super tuned in. And I think a lot of those people are the hedge fund, crypto hedge funds. They got in, they have insider knowledge. They even say, we will support your effort. We'll support your marketing. And I mean, you're against these large teams that are trying to catch suckers. And that is just like a poker table. So if you are not an expert at poker, don't sit down, because you'll lose your money really fast.
Perfect. Okay, now a topic that this week I added controversy to, as if it doesn't have enough already, when I announced that CGC, my company, is now offering professional altcoin marketing services, which, given my deep experience with multiple industries, seems like a logical career move to make. In response, some questioned my credibility and loyalty to Bitcoin, when essentially all I did was acknowledge that altcoins are not going away, and that for investors interested in taking high-risk flyers in the space, I try to make the process more transparent and professional. And so I'm not asking for your views on my credibility, although you're welcome to share them. But more importantly, I want to know if you agree that Bitcoin maximalist positions might have to be softened relative to where they were in the past, in light of the fact that altcoins have become a significant part of the crypto landscape. But maybe they haven't, per what we were just talking about before. And by maximalist, please discern if you think altcoins as a group will live or die, or alternatively, if you recognize they're here to stay or should be avoided.
Well, Andy, I've been watching you for a long time, so I don't think you're a scammer or anything. I think you are trying to spread education and add value to the space. So I understand this altcoin service thing you're doing. I've had some talks with people in the podcasting world, and many conversations with different people trying to figure out how to monetize what we're doing here, or what I'm doing here, and a lot of other podcasts are doing, because there isn't as much profit in what we're doing right now. And so a lot of people start going down the altcoin route to find some profitability. Some podcasts go and blatantly advertise ICOs. So I don't want to go that route, and I wouldn't support you doing that route. But if you are doing like, services, that's cool. Talking about softening Bitcoin maximalism, I don't think so. I'm putting together a presentation for an education day that I'm doing at my local meetup, and talking about protocols and how they converge versus differentiate at the application layer. And maybe the problem is there's just so much damn money out there that can come in. So the altcoins might survive for a long time because there's just a ton of money, almost unlimited amounts of money that can come into the space. But eventually, when this all, settles out, Bitcoin is going to be the one standing, because that's the way that protocols function. Communication protocols always converge onto one standard, and also money always converges onto one standard, if possible. So, no, I don't think that there is any room for softening a long-term outlook on Bitcoin maximalism. And also, I do think that by supporting altcoins, it does delay Bitcoin's eventual supremacy, I guess. And that is because, it takes mind share away. It also takes money coming in. It takes that away for the short term. And a lot of these, the way prices work is you don't have to have $5 billion come in to push the market cap up $5 billion. You only need like maybe $500 million to push the price up $5 billion. So by supporting these altcoins, I think it actually adds volatility to Bitcoin. So I don't think there's any room for softening maximalism.
Right. Well, these are all good points, and I agree on pretty much all of them. When I talk about softening maximalism, I have not softened my maximalism. You think that I simply because I said that if I vet what I believe to be a quality project that might be around for a while, if I help them to market themselves, that somehow that I am betraying Bitcoin. I am all in on Bitcoin. That's not going to change. I'm not going to be buying any altcoins. I'm not going to be doing anything else other than trying to find high quality names that people are interested in, that want help. It's that simple. Look, I worked in junior mining companies doing investor relations consulting for many years. People could say, well, why would you be doing that? I mean, why don't you just tell people to buy gold? Well, because there's a demand for them. That's all, and it's not my endorsing. It's just simply they needed help. It's part of the ecosystem. There are going to be altcoins that succeed. There's going to be far more that fail. But I don't really see it as a problem if I'm honest and show integrity, which I've done all along. That said, I don't think I'm going to have many clients, because there's not many that I think are going to pass my smell test for even wanting to deal with them, because there's really that much not going on. And as for Bitcoin maximalism in general, I agree completely. I mean, what were the stories we just talked about here? We talked about how Ethereum has major problems. We're talking about B Gold, which, I mean, theoretically, it's one of the biggest cryptos getting hacked. We're talking about the potential issues in Bcash. You look up and down the list, Verge. I mean, there's plenty of issues out there in altcoin land. And if we are in weak market conditions, as you said, they're going to be exposed. I'm just simply saying, you talk about monetizing, and people think we just sit here doing this for free. I would say that most of the people that are doing podcasting are living off of hoping that Bitcoin goes up and their savings, because it's almost impossible to monetize anything anymore, especially in these kind of conditions. So again, I am going to be as big a supporter of Bitcoin as I can. But there will always be people out there, just like people who wanted to buy mining shares instead of gold, who want to buy altcoins. And I will participate if there's something to be done that's worthwhile. That's all.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about where you said there'll be more that fail than succeed. In my research for this new presentation that I'm putting together, I have looked into TCP/IP competitors. So that's the protocol, that the internet is based on. And there was one called X25. And I thought, oh, TCP/IP won back in the 90s. Well, there was still X25 providers in France and in Europe all the way up until like 2005, I think, or 2008 even. So it took a long time for TCP/IP to completely win, but it did. And so I think that's the same way with Bitcoin. We might have some of these major altcoins that stick around for a long time, but they'll eventually just come into the fold of Bitcoin. Another thing I want to say too is that I've been looking at the coin market cap. They have historical top 10s, right? Or listings. Mm-hmm. So you can go back by, I think, month. You can look at, say, May of 2013 and see what the rankings were. Well, there was total scams up there, right? There was Paycoin and BitShares that's down like number like 200 now, and it's just a churn. But the one constant is Bitcoin at the top. So all these altcoins will constantly churn and churn and churn. I think there will be an altcoin market almost indefinitely, but there will not be like a number two. The second place is the first loser, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article like a few months ago called Cryptocurrencies versus Securities. And I also wrote some way back when talking about how most cryptos should be called crypto assets, because there's only one cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is the only one that can be considered money or in the realm of money. Everything else is just, I've said, a high risk tech stock, just a new age one, because they are not doing anything that's monetary. I mean, some may try, but for the most part, as you say, anyone that tries to do something that is, quote, competing with Bitcoin or doing something that Bitcoin can eventually do for, like, say, privacy, will get subsumed. It's just that simple. I mean, yeah, it could have a niche, but for the most part, when I say there's going to be an altcoin market, I think that there's going to be, again, you're talking about tens of trillions of dollars could enter the space. People are going to be looking for things that they attribute value to. If it's not competing per se with Bitcoin, but has something that people find valuable, then maybe it'll be worth something one day. Most of them won't be able to achieve that. Like in the dot-coms, only a handful were able to have a business model that even survived in the internet. But there'll be names out there that can do that. I mean, for instance, I talked about B-Rhodium again. It was free. There's nothing that they're doing that's competing with Bitcoin. If they try to compete, they will be destroyed. If they don't compete, they have a chance, a small chance, but a chance. And that's what I think the future of altcoins is. Because when it comes to cryptocurrency in general, I think your top 10 5 years ago, your top 10 50 years from now is going to have one dominant name at the top. Now, as we celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day this week, i.e. the day 8 years ago when 2 pizzas were purchased for 10,000 Bitcoin, amidst yet another violent correction, which has erased tens of billions of dollars in just a few days. Update us, Ansel, on your view of the optimum Bitcoin investment strategy, as if it has changed in the current mega volatile, FUD-enveloped trading environment.
It's always going to be buy and hold. I'm not worried about taxes and stuff because I buy and hold for the long term. And I think I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure that one day we won't have to worry about taxes on Bitcoin because everybody will have it and it will be seen as money. So yeah, buy and hold, wait it out at least 2 or 3 years. And I wouldn't go onto Coinbase anymore. Any of the big exchanges probably aren't that good because they are getting more and more invasive on your privacy. And we know that they are sharing data with the government. I would try out BISC, try out some of these other ways to get Bitcoin. Local Bitcoins, even they have started collecting some information. So BISC or other decentralized exchanges are the best way to go, or find somebody at your meetup. Go to the meetup in your local town. That is a huge underutilized resource. And yeah, just buy and hold long term. If you are buying today and the price goes down $1,000 or 10% or something, don't worry about that. Just have a mindset. I'm going to buy as much as I can right now and hold it for 3 to 5 years, and you will be laughing at the end of that.
I mean, just to look at what has happened in Bitcoin this year, as in we're in May. I mean, the price went from 20,000 to 6,000 to 12 to 9 to 12 to 6 to 10 to 7, and here we are at 7,500. This is just in 5 months' time. And as we're talking about throughout this call, there's nothing wrong. What? Because the Department of Justice is going to inquire as to whether the price is manipulated. And by the way, it's manipulated down. That's not news, because the Mt. Gox trustee has some Bitcoin. And by the way, please, people, read the articles that I put up on Steemit, the one I put up today. I don't even know if there's going to be any more sales from the Mt. Gox trustee at all if you do the research, as if $1 billion or $500 million worth really matters in the big scheme of things and what Bitcoin's doing and the size of the capital that's coming into the market. And again, you talked about taxes. I mean, if you just said, even if you're a whale who's made a lot of profits, and you say, well, let me, what if I sold today? You go, oh my God, look at how much I give back in taxes, and then I'd be stuck in fiat again. And by the way, is anyone looking at the fiat? It's amazing. Like I'm in in Twitter and all these places. I mean, if I write a post about like the Bank of Japan is negative interest rates, or the ECB, or Deutsche Bank is collapsing, or something like that, like you'll get 2 likes. Like no one seems to understand the reason Bitcoin came into being is because of fiat currency and the damage it's doing. The debt is exploding. Look, the interest rates go up a tiny bit, and then housing numbers come down, and the PMI numbers come down, and oh no, the oil price is up, so that's cutting down. So there's going to be more debt. I mean, Deutsche Bank. I mean, people forget 2 years ago, Deutsche Bank, they thought it was going to go bankrupt. Well, the price plunged below that level 2 years ago today. I mean, there's some serious issues in the legacy system that are only going to get worse. And you talk about 2 or 3 years from now, the halving is less than 2 years from now. We're already more than halfway into the halving, and all these things that we're talking about are just comical as the institutions do their work and start to acquire Bitcoin at first as a hedge and eventually as it becomes a dominant asset class. So, Ansel, give us your big picture view, to end the show, on the current state of Bitcoin and what your best guess is of how events might unfold in the second half of the year.
My big picture view is that there is so much development happening on Lightning, we wouldn't even believe it. You can't keep up with it. Every day there seems to be something else coming out. There's probably hundreds or thousands of small little projects all around Lightning Network. I mean, next year there's probably going to be video games and all sorts of things that incorporate Lightning. I don't think it's going to be used as coffee, but at least in the near term, I think it's going to have some cool new use case, like inside video games.
Well,
I think.
Yeah, go on.
Go.
I said, go.
I was just going to talk about the geopolitics that you started to touch on there with the institutional or the international legacy financial system. We haven't really seen a ton of financial issues or crises like banking crisis in Italy 2 years ago. That's some of the headlines have started coming back. We've also seen Turkey maybe starting to look like they can't handle some inflation over there, and Venezuela, of course. But as those type of things creep back in, because it's a cycle, as those things creep back in, Bitcoin's use case is going to be front and center. And each time that cycle repeats itself, Bitcoin is a little bit more front and center. And pretty soon it's going to be the only thing that those people think about is getting their hands on Bitcoin.
Right. Well, the last crisis, Bitcoin white paper came out right in the middle of it. I think the Bitcoin white paper came out on Halloween of 2008, which was a few weeks after the Lehman Brothers, and a few weeks before the Citibank and Bank of America and all those things. The next time around, you bet it'll be front and center with a very big valuation and a lot of people looking at it.
Well, even the small ones like Cyprus, and then Greece and Italy, all those small ones that happen, Bitcoin gets more and more in the limelight every time.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking earlier about the how the markets are held up between the PPTs in the stock market and the QE going on in the bond markets. I mean, that's the biggest bubble ever. Fiat currency is being supported by printed money that's holding it up. I mean, that's the ultimate oxymoron. It's going to get worse and worse. Debt, by nature in a fiat currency system rises parabolically, and that's where we are. And things like what's going on in Italy right now can catalyze that, or at Deutsche Bank, or in Turkey, or in many other places, especially when even the slightest bit of economic decline comes, which I think we're seeing right now. You're seeing the numbers come down. You're seeing interest rates got too high, oil prices, and it's having a direct impact. Meanwhile, the ECB and the BOJ, through all this supposed expansion, still have QE and still have negative interest rates. And that's during the supposed, in their view, good times. And we're still at 1% interest rates here. And now we have a new Fed chairman, so he can do whatever he wants. And I think that, that background story is at some point going to come into the foreground, because you can only hold up markets with printed money, for some time. And this has been the longest ever. And
well,
again,
sorry to interrupt you. It's ironic that the biggest frauds, the biggest scams, the biggest Ponzi schemes are run by government, right? The Social Security, the debt, the national debts. You have counterfeiting from the Fed, from the central banks, and like they'll even do things like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Like that was a complete fraud. So, but we think that the SEC can come into crypto and make it better. Like,
right.
So we're letting the worst criminals. It would be like giving the reins over to Craig Wright. Wow, you would never give it over to the worst scammer, right? You would like Bitcoin is going to be it's going to be calling the bluff of the governments out there.
Yeah, it's funny with this whole, if you read the news this morning about this DOJ thing, they say Bitcoin down on regulatory fears. I'm going, wait, so the DOJ is going to crack down on manipulation of trading, and somehow that means that people are worried about, no, that if they were actually going to do that, this would be good. But that's the spin that gets put on it. But either way, they don't do anything. And the DOJ, look, the United States, again, 4% of the population of the world lives in the United States. Bitcoin really doesn't care if the DOJ does anything. And the fact is they're not doing anything, and there's nothing that they could do. And look, faith in those that have done the destruction with the fiat currency is waning. And that's why Bitcoin has got as far as it will. And we're in this kind of middle period where we had the initial surge of interest, and now the technology and the education is going to take over. And eventually either something huge will happen, like maybe Europe does fall apart, or eventually just the tides of momentum win out as cryptocurrency takes its rightful place in the leadership of the digital age. And the last thing, you noticed that you mentioned that coffee thing. It's been like the mantra of the anti-Bitcoiners, and I just laugh at it. Like why? First of all, why would I want to spend something that I think is valuable, that I bought because I think it's gold, like digital gold, to buy anything, let alone coffee? And then I saw this one particular guy at Bcash. He's like, well, we're going to be fine because look, you need one crypto for buying coffee and one for store of value. And I'm going, well, if you don't think your crypto is a store of value, why would I want to hold it to buy coffee knowing that it's not going to hold its value? Like, why is it going to hold its value? So you can buy coffee with it?
Yeah, that's that argument is so shallow, and you can see right through anybody that thinks like two steps can see right through coffee with Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, coffee. Yes, coffee will be bought with Bitcoin one day in the future when it's reached its equilibrium level, and it is cheaper to use it. Yeah, a Satoshi, exactly. That will happen sometime in the future. It may take a while, but it may not take a while, and that's why we hodl. So with that, we're going to conclude today's podcast featuring one of the, so funny, I have Bitcoin communists, I didn't change it. One of the Bitcoin community's most active, prolific, and informative tweeters, Ansel Lindner. Follow him at Ansel Lindner, and his Bitcoin and Markets podcast at BTC MRKTS, and at the World Crypto Network iTunes feed. As for me, follow me at Andy_Hoffman_CG and the CGC blog at CryptoGoldCentral.com. And if you are an individual or altcoin developer seeking professional crypto consultation, please contact me. Thanks very much and have a great crypto day.
Thanks, Andy.